Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. On behalf of Nepal Institute for International Cooperation and Engagement, it gives me great pleasure to extend a warm welcome to our distinguished chair, fellow scholars, and participants who have joined us through Zoom and are watching us live on YouTube channel. We are thrilled to have you join us today at International Young Scholars Summit 2020. This international forum aims to bring together young scholars from all over the world over a single platform. The aim is to create an academic space to encourage young scholars and academicians from the field of international relations, political science, diplomacy, public policy, administration, and related subfields. The conference will be held for 3 days consecutively through 30 different sessions, with the two parallel sessions, white and green rooms, running simultaneously throughout the conference. The conference will feature 275 scholars from 25 different countries who will be delivering their presentations and sharing their understanding with us. The session is streaming live on our YouTube channel, so please feel free to share on your social media handle with hashtag IYSS2020. This is the eighth session of the conference. To chair and moderate this session, it is a great pleasure to have Dr. Abhiruchi Ojha here with us. Dr. Abhiruchi Ojha is an assistant professor, Department of Politics and Governance at Central University of Kashmir. She has combined research, teaching, and activism in her work. She holds PhD from Jawaharlal Nehru University. She is also a visiting fellow at NIICE. Her research interests span international politics and gender studies, with a specific focus on women's participation in politics, gender dynamics of conflict and peace, gendering artificial intelligence, and developing non-Western perspectives on international relations. Her recent publications include Two Decades of Development, Gender and Citizenship in Democratic South Africa, Issues of Underrepresentation, Mapping Women in Politics, Women's Political Representation in 16th Lok Sabha, Continuity, Contestation or Change. Among others, among others, she has been a part of several research projects, including one on the impact of Dalit women in Indian politics for international development, Research Center Canada and Indian Institute of Dalit Studies. Without any further delay, I request Dr. Abhiruchi Ojha to chair the session.
Thank you so much. Welcome everybody. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, based on wherever you're attending this conference from. We welcome you to NIICE in this fabulous, absolutely wonderful conference where several scholars across the globe have gathered here to share their work. Today's panel is on non-traditional security. Now, in last 20 years, there has been growing work that has happened due to 4 different reasons. We have seen the nature of security being challenged and continuously evolving due to non-traditional issues such as climate change, environmental issues, global health like pandemic that we are living as of now, and also the issue of terrorism. We at NIICE invite you to look at these various areas and to explore these areas. We have got lots of bright young scholars. We are here with us today. I will just like to say that the presenters have 8 minutes each for their presentation, and we are looking forward for a very rich discussion after the presentations. I will like to invite our first speaker, who is Ms. Dr. Afzalur Rahman. He's a lecturer at University of Chittagong, Bangladesh, and he would be presenting on non-traditional security in international relations, the case of COVID-19. Over to you, Dr. Rahman.
So am I audible and screen is visible to everyone?
Yes, we can see your screen and we can also hear you.
Okay, thank you very much, Honorable Chair, for giving me the floor, and also very special thanks to Nepal Institute for International uh, Cooperation and Engagement for giving me the chance to speak on this Young Scholar Summit 2020. So what I'm gonna talking right now today is about the non-traditional security in international relations and the case of COVID-19. So in general, okay. So these are the few issues that I'm gonna share with you about the brief introductions in the background and my research questions and objectives and what methodology I follow in my papers and final points is about the discussions point of my papers, including a very concise conclusions of my paper. Let's move on to the introductions. We know that in my papers I just only there's a specific time framing from 1648 to present. So we know that from 1648 in 1648 nation state was formed after the after the Treaty of Westphalia was passed by the European countries. So from that moment, state always, nation state very particularly, they are always solely focused on the security, and that security is about the traditional security, protecting their borders, and enhancing their military capabilities and preparing themselves for the war and preparing themselves from the unwanted enemy or like terrorists and many more things. Okay, so and there's another security concept that is non-traditional security already mentioned by our chair, that like issue of climate change, health, and energy security. There are many more things that are included. I'm not going to there, but I say that my concern of non-traditional security is there only the health. So we see that in international relations, after the, onward from first world until today, we see the dominance of realists are very visible, like E.H. Carr, Morgenthau, Waltz. Those are the few, realists who always influence international relations that recognized by the state and a state, regional cooperation agencies, and international body too. So now move on to the debate between international, traditional security and non-traditional security. Always is a one-sided game. I say that this game always owned by the, traditional security concept of the state. So that is the reasons. If you compare the present military, expenditures of the world, then you see that 30+% of the world military budget is expanded by the USA, 40% is China, and rest of the, rest of the budget are the whole world. Okay, so let's look. The health budget is very minor. Okay, in national level or international level. So outbreak of COVID-19 have poses two questions. One is, so there is a negligence of World Health Organizations. They declare these things as a health crisis or public emergency after around 2 months. Okay, so this is a very long time to announce the pandemic as an emergency. Because of that reason, many countries infected by COVID-19, including my country also. So, and secondly, that even if we neglect the WHO, we also have a major blame should be go to what I say, that international community or global superpower. Over there, after the outbreak of the Ebola, SARS, and SARS-CoV, and also many other viruses, okay, who always, World Health Organization form different types of commissions, and they give specific recommendations. International community neglect and denied those sorts of recommendations. That is the reasons we are facing right now. This is one of the greatest pandemic of our time, and also in the history of the world. So now look on to the background. For all of your kind of information, and in my papers, I just try to say pandemic always exists. Okay, like COVID-19 or COP19. This sort of virus also outbreak in China in 2002. SARS-CoV. This is also the same virus. Classified virus like COVID-19, but we did not, recognize that virus. But we just did not take that things as an important issue, because we always focus on the security of the state. Really, I have to sorry to say, in the pandemic time, in 9 months, state superpower always in the pandemic, they're also conflicting with each other. You see that China and India conflict, and many are in conflict in Middle East. That's also going on in this pandemic time. I say this is the traditional concern of the state security, but we need to focus on more on a non-traditional concern. So now move on to the issues of what are the specific objectives. My main objective is to analyze the impact of coronavirus as a non-traditional security on contemporary world by using the international relations theories, a different theory, and also try to understand the debate between traditional and non-traditional security. And finally, I just use the historical, like what I say, what I said of comparison from the 1648 to present. And these are the research questions. How this pandemic became a security concern? Why non-traditional security need more policy attention? What are the lawfuls of who right now have? And should you want to revise the world global health law? And finally, the how we will govern the global pandemic in future. So methodology I use in there, all the secondary resources, and discussions. This is the important part of my lecture papers. Okay, if we go through the health security and the non-traditional issues, then we see there is an always state and the nations always have a tendency to focus on containment rather than prevention. You know what? That is the reason COP when this sort of virus outbreak in China in 2002, and after the outbreak of the Ebola and surge, we just consider those things as a short-term remedy and short-term steps. We did not take any long-term attempts or steps to solve this sort of problem. That is the reason we always focus on containment, not the prevention. And secondly, we see that there is one fine example that I want to show you, that how traditional security concern always been well managed by the state through the United Nations. You know what? When United Nations was formed, the main fundamental reason of United Nations is to halt the next world war, that is third world war. Okay, United Nations, I think that they're success enough to halt the third world war. Okay, so and secondly, who as organizations, they give different types of suggestions to. I already share with you that after the Ebola epidemic, there was in a form of 4 commissions. That commission's report was neglected by the international community. Now move on to what are the fundamental problem we need to identify in the WHO. I mean, what are the limitations of the WHO right now? Number one is who is inability to reform. I mean, who is very rigid about their reform. And number two is there is a lack of coherence. Also, there is a lack of funding, and there is a lack of coordinations among the member state and the health minister about the proper, effective health policy. And finally, and last one is who also have a lack of a strong leadership that is visible right now. To some extent, USA blame the leader of the WHO that is biased to some specific country like China. I think that this is a leadership problem. We also need to recognize that things. So if I go through the present status, then we see there is a lack of coordinations in whose vaccinations production process. Also there is 6 vaccinations by individual country, but there is no vaccinations under the umbrella of the WHO. So that is the reason I think that in coming days, developing country will face more problem because of the price of the vaccine. I think that this sort of strategy also need to reform under the leadership of the WHO. So I say that WHO as an organizations from 1614, I will finish within 1 minute, okay, Speaker, Honorable Chair. So pose a strong question marks to the international community. After the 1948, the main objectives of the WHO was to all attainment of all people's highest possible level of health benefit, okay, but it failed to give that sort of facility to the international community. Now move on to my final part, conclusion on traditional security in every sector, national, regional, and international level. And secondly, we need to reform the WHO immediately and give them more far. And finally, global cooperation is a must. If I say the quick recap of my papers, in that case, I have to say that my papers, I just try to understand the debate between traditional and non-traditional security through the international relations perspectives. And secondly, I just try to sort out the problem of WHO. And finally, I say from 1648 to present, we neglect the issue of non-traditional security. So that is the reasons we need to reconstruct. We need to rethink that sort of idea. Thank you very much, everyone, for giving me that sort of wonderful opportunities to say something in NIICE conference. Okay, thank you again.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Rahman, for not only keeping on time, but also flagging some very important issues which are related to the negligence of public health in general, which has exposed most of the nation states in contemporary time, and also the issues of global governance around the health of issue, the limitations that WHO has, and also the concerns regarding what would be the possible reforms and in which direction we should be looking at when we are talking about the reforms in international governance. So thank you so much. Let me now, without wasting much time, invite the next speaker. Before the next speaker, I would like to inform the audience that you can now start posting your comments, your questions in the chat box. Please keep it brief. We will not be taking any questions through mic. So if you have any questions for the presentations, you can put it on the chat box right away. Our next speaker is Dr. Shreya Sinha. She's Research Associate at NIICE and a PhD candidate in Jawaharlal Nehru University. She is going to present on the European Union's response to non-traditional security threat, a case study of terrorism. Over to you, Ms. Sinha. You've got 8 minutes.
Ma'am, you're not audible.
Can everybody hear me now?
Yes, you're perfectly audible.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, ma'am, for the introduction. As ma'am has introduced, I'm Shreya Sinha. The topic that I'm speaking on today is the European Union's response to non-traditional security threats. The theme of this entire session is non-traditional security threats, and the previous speaker has also taken a moment to describe it. Still, I would not go much deeper into it. I just want to give a broad framework. So when we talk about security, we know it can be divided into traditional and non-traditional. So with respect to my paper, which I'm presenting, traditional security threats primarily focuses on military threat, which is from traditional state actors. And non-traditional security threats are those which are from basically non-state actors. And in this context, terrorism is one of the biggest non-traditional security threats because that is where non-state actors actually emerged from. Terrorism was probably the first non-traditional security threat that came into picture in international relations. And I'm speaking particularly for European Union. So if we see the global security landscape, and in particular the security landscape of Europe, we see that it has undergone a change as compared to the Cold War period to the post-Cold War period. Because from World War II till the time Cold War was happening, and during Cold War also, security was primarily defined from a military point of view, because national security and nation security was security at that point. There was no concept of other kinds of security. We can see that in terms of military expenditure also, not just in Europe, but all countries across the globe. The military expenditure was high at that time. And when in the post-Cold War period, we see the concept of security actually expanding away. It did not include just national security or security military threats, but also other kind of security, which that is where non-state actors come in the picture. So that is the time people started to develop concepts like human security. Even though human security was there, but it is in the post-Cold War period that it became more prominent, and specifically to Europe, that non-traditional security threats and human security became more prominent in that period. So in this context, I just want to introduce terrorism. And terrorism, international terrorism, we know terrorism, ever since globalization has taken place, terrorism has become more prominent because non-state actors, they are not completely domestic or they are not purely interstate. It is on the transnational scope and the porosity of borders that terrorism actually take advantage of. And in this context, European Union is actually a very prime target, because we know European Union is a bloc of 27 member states, and there are open democracies and open borders and free access across borders. So that is why European Union and Europe as a continent has been a soft target for terrorism. And ever since 9/11 has happened, I think this session is taking place quite timely, because yesterday was 9/11 and it has been 19 years since 9/11. So ever since 9/11 has happened, we see that even though the attacks were on the US and they did not directly implicate Europe or any country of Europe, but we see that the attacks were at such a scale that the sheer impact was felt across the globe, especially among Western European countries, because we know Western European countries are in international organization called NATO with the US. So when 9/11 happened, Article 5 of NATO was invoked, and most of the Western European countries, they were forced to support US in their war on terror. And many Eastern European countries, because of the Warsaw Pact, did not do this. But that is when Europe was also, the security of Europe was also very much impacted, is the point that I'm trying to make. And after that, also, we saw Europe became very vulnerable to terrorist attacks. 2004, the Madrid train bombings happened, and 2005, the London attacks happened, and the very recent Paris attacks also happened in 2015. So it was actually after 2001 that attacks in Europe also became more prominent, and Europe started recognizing terrorism as a serious threat. So in this context, I just want to point out that in 2003 is actually the first time that the European security strategy came out, and that is when non-traditional security threats were actually properly documented for Europe, because they came out with 5 important security threats to Europe. And these were, I would just like to read them out: proliferation of weapons of mass destruction, regional conflict, state failure, organized crime, and terrorism. So we see in 2003, terrorism is the first time that terrorism is mentioned in any European Union security related strategy or document. And subsequent to that, 2004 and 2005 attacks were happening, and we see then the European Union counterterrorism strategy came for the first time in 2005. So the EU counterterrorism strategy came in 2005, and it focused on basically 4 ideals. These are prevent, protect, pursue, and respond. So we see in these 4 ideals, we kind of get an idea of the approach that the EU was taking towards terrorism and towards counterterrorism. It is very different from the American approach. The American approach to attacks was a war on terror. They declared war on terror. It was a completely military-based reaction. They were treating terrorism as a state actor, because you declare war against a state actor, right? So they declared war on terrorism. But EU and European countries and European member states, they did not follow a war on terror approach. They have adopted a criminal law enforcement approach. They treat terrorism as a crime, and they don't treat terrorism as a state actor who is attacking them. They treat it as a criminal offense. Basically, police and judiciary, they have major roles to play in the EU. So when you compare the American approach to the European approach, this becomes very evident that Europe is actually focusing not just on the reaction part, but is also focusing on how to prevent and how to protect their citizens before the terrorist attacks are actually happening. They try to focus on the root causes of terrorism. They are focusing the origin of terrorism in actually a nexus of not just security, but also security and development. They try to analyze the lack of development, underdevelopment, lack of good governance, or poor governance tools as where terrorism is actually originating. Because if you see the data of European Union, most of the attacks have actually been lone wolf attacks. They are not attacks like the 9/11. They cannot be historically traced back to a particular organization or a particular terrorist group. They are mostly radicalized lone wolves within European soil which are attacking. So the point that European Union is trying to make in its strategy is that you do not have to focus on just countering terrorism. You have to focus on the root causes of terrorism and how to prevent radicalization, on how to prevent underdevelopment and bad governance, so that these problems do not arise in the first place. Yeah, and at the same time, there have also been several drawbacks in EU's counterterrorism strategy. One major drawback that I would like to talk about, which is important in this non-traditional security aspect, is that because EU is a collection of 27 member states, making a decision at the supranational level, at the union level, becomes very difficult, because member states obviously have their national and sovereign interests at hand first. That is their first parameter to while devising any policy or any strategy. So for the EU to formulate a strategy and to make sure that all member states are okay with it, there is a lot of lack of coordination and lack of harmonization that happens there. Political will is a picture. The governments are changing in every member state, so that is an issue. So these are few issues that they need to overcome in order to become a more effective counter-terrorism device. And this is important. In conclusion, I just want to say that that is the most important thing: political will and coordination between member states, because a supranational structure like EU, while countering a threat like terrorism, which is transnational in its scope in the first place, so it is important for those member states to coordinate, for the different implementation agencies within EU, which are multiple, to be able to coordinate and cooperate amongst each other to effectively counter terrorism and to effectively counter this non-traditional security threat. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think I'm blessed with brilliant participants who are keeping to the time, so I don't have to sort of worry about that. Thank you, Ms. Sinha, for flagging up several issues. You have been able to very successfully contrast the terrorism, counterterrorism strategies between America and European approach. You have also looked at flagged issue of development and governance, and then what are the challenges that the European Union has and how they are responding. It's a fascinating thing. One can think of many questions that comes to the mind, considering the fact that when you talk about non-traditional security, terrorism is something that is much worked upon, and the other aspects don't really sort of are worked that much. So in that context, there are a lot of, I hope that there are a lot of questions that you have triggered in audience's minds. So thank you so much. Let me now move on to our next speaker. Our next speaker is Dr. Ambikesh Kumar Tripathi. He is an assistant professor at Mahatma Gandhi Central University, and he is going to speak on COVID-19, a non-traditional security threat. Over to you, Dr. Tripathi.
Thank you, Dr. Ojha. I'm audible. Thank you, Dr. Ojha, and I'm thankful to NIICE for inviting me in such a wonderful young scholars forum. I think the major issue regarding non-security threat has been already discussed by the two eminent previous speakers, Ms. Sinha and Mr. Rahman. So there is nothing much left to speak for me in theoretical background of non-security threat. Everybody knows that the discussion about the non-security threat came in serious discussion around the academia late 60s, late 70s even, and it becomes core after 90s. As Ms. Sinha told, terrorism, and I think the intellectual academia is also keeping terrorism in a category of non-traditional security threat. But I think the time we are living right now, we have to think about that the terrorism is really a non-traditional security threat, because of the many nation states know that terrorism is the reality of the time, and almost every state is almost prepared to cope this thing. But some kind of sudden threat which came from from nature and from the human intervention. That these things must be categorized in terms of non-terrorism security threat. And the biggest one is now the world is facing COVID in terms of COVID-19. The point of what I'm going to focus is basically what COVID, in the COVID period, what the world seeing right now. The most of the biggest the countries who has a big economy are not prepared for such kind of threats coming from non-traditional category of threats. So we saw the almost all economies has been flattened in trying to flatten the spread curve of coronavirus. So I think the most important part, what the Rahman has discussed already on the part of WHO. I would like to say now health is no longer confined within a domestic border, and this is the great lesson we learned from this pandemic. So the health security issue is the one of the most important aspect we are facing right now. So the one of the most important submission from my side is the international organizations like WHO, even United Nations have to think about in a bigger framework that can cover the health security issue in terms of non-traditional security threat. And also the second important thing which is the repercussion of this COVID problem is downfall of the economy. The most almost all big economies has been fall down, and they registered negative growth in GDP growth in negative terms. So I think I think the 10 million people of the world not the 10 million, but 130 million people will suffer from this such kind of economic fall down. So another most important part that we have to think in terms of, especially the nation state, and to think in this regard how to secure their own people in such condition. The post-pandemic society, the post-pandemic period is still, our in imagination, unless and until vaccine came. So, how the international organization and the nation state have to think in terms of health security of their people, and also in terms of economic security. We see the tragic stories from the different corner from across the world, especially from the India, of the migrant laborers. We saw the people, walk from miles to miles to reach their own homes. Even they reach their home, they face different kind of social issues, and they have to they have to quarantine. Even they're not affected from this virus, but they have to quarantine. They have not quarantine, but they're alienated from their family, their homes, their jobs. So these are the some important issues that the pandemic has shown us. In the terms of COVID-19 as a non-security threat, the government, the nation state, the international organizations have to think so that can so that can the governments and the state reach to the last man of Gandhi's. We can read the tears of the last man of the Gandhi. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Tripathi, for giving a sort of a general picture on the non-traditional security and also specifically talking about two underlining areas, which is related to health and economic slowdown. When we have time, maybe we can come back to you and then you can talk about the specific aspects that you would like to highlight regarding this. And you had also sort of raised the issue of reverse migration that is taking place. So the economic impact of COVID-19, but we would like to hear if you have something more specific. If we have time, we can come back to you. So thank you so much. Now I move on to the next speaker. Next speaker is Miss Dr. Ashu Shukla, who's a student at South Asia University, and who would be talking to us about non-traditional security challenges in changing Arctic. Over to you. You've got 8 minutes.
Thank you. Am I audible? Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you and we can also see you.
Okay. First of all, I would really like to thank NIICE Nepal for giving me floor to present my views. So I'll be presenting my paper on non-traditional security challenges in the changing Arctic. The paper is divided into three parts. First, I'll very briefly define what is non-traditional security issues. Second, uh, when we are talking about changing Arctic, I'll be discussing what exactly the change Arctic region is experiencing. And third, I will look at the dangers that are emanating from the Arctic region due to the climate change. Moving on. So, while watching movie Contagious, one would have never thought in years that the one would have never thought in years that a pandemic, that a virus is going to do such a havoc in the real world. The worldwide spread of COVID-19, which has affected people directly due to the number of active cases and indirectly due to depleting economies, disruption of supply chains, and rising unemployment, is an eye-opener. The pandemic has brought the non-traditional security issues at the forefront, which previously discussed among few intellectual groupings. So what exactly is non-traditional security issues? According to the Melly Anthony, non-traditional security issues are challenges to the survival and well-being of people and state, primarily arising from the non-military sources like climate change, infectious diseases, and food shortages. These dangers are often transitional in scope and require comprehensive political, economic, and social responses. Moving to the interest of region, which is Arctic. So what happened? What is actually changing in the Arctic? According to the special report by IPCC, published in 2019, titled The Ocean and Cryosphere in the Changing Climate, mentions that during 2016 and 18, the temperature of the Arctic was 16 degrees Celsius above the recorded average temperature from 1981 to 2010, resulting in an unprecedented melting of sea ice. In the same report, it highlighted that the polar regions are losing ice and the oceans are changing rapidly. The consequences of this polar transition extended to the whole planet and are affecting people in multiple ways. In this slide, you can see how the geography of the region is changing due to the melting of ice from 1850 to 2013. The lowest sea ice was recorded in year 2016. This change in geography has opened the efficient and shortest sea route, which is known as Northern Sea Route and Northwest Passage, which are now open for tourism and industrial purposes. Not only this, there is also an estimated that the US Geological Survey has estimated that natural resources and there are abundance of natural resources in the Arctic region, and it mentions that by 2007, more than 400 oil and gas fields containing 40 billions of barrels of oil, 1,136 trillion cubic feet of natural gas, and 8 billion of natural gas liquids has been developed north of the Arctic Circle. And here in this slide, you can see the undiscovered oil and gas in the major 5 Arctic states. Moving on, the engagement of the Arctic state at more substantial level has introduced industrial projects like drilling of natural gas, manufacturing oils, pipelines, which local communities oppose as it will put their culture, environment, and livelihood under grave danger. Moving on to the dangers that are emanating from the Arctic due to climate change are here in 2020, 9 June, you can see the Arctic, the Northern nickel accident has happened, which is a nickel producing firm in Russia. And here you can see the sea has turned into red because of the oil spill. And this is about 20,000 tons of oil, diesel oil, that has been released into the river. It has been reported by BBC that the accident will pollute freshwater bodies and harm natural habitats. The effect of such accidents will directly impact the animals and indirectly humans due to the consumption of fishes and other water bodies. Moving on to this, the lifestyle of Arctic people and communities are very different from the rest of the world. The warming Arctic and melting of permafrost have exposed the resurrected viruses that were buried 75 years ago under the ice sheet. The 2016 Siberian heat waves exposed the decayed bodies of reindeer and humans to the surface and released anthrax spores, causing the death of around 22,000 reindeers It is also believed that anthrax infected 20 local people and killed 12-year-old boy in the region. Here, in this report by BBC Earth, you can see that there are diseases hidden in ice and they are waking up. In respect of such events, Mark Nuttall and Klaus Dodds in their book on Arctic mentions that this freakish event, however, served as a reminder that viruses have a nasty habit of being resurrected. Warming melts not only ice and snow, but it has also has capacity to reanimate things that we thought were dead and buried. The past haunts the present. It will be it will be wrong to say that the measures to handle these events due to climate change is not happening. The region is also a site of seed vaults, which is dubbed as Doomsday Seed Vaults, built in Norway, that's supposed to protect thousands of crops from all over the world from the climate change, natural disasters, and war. The vault is capable to preserve seeds without human intervention, but due to warming permafrost, it has been reported that water reached to the vault gates, and now people need to intervene to make sure the vault is protected, which clearly fails the main purpose to build vault, preserving for the doomsday. Moving on to the concluding part, in respect of the Arctic, intergovernmental organizations like Arctic Council and Arctic Circles that look into the cooperation, coordination, and ensures the participation of several ethnic communities are working to preserve the Arctic region from the ills of climate change. There is a need of an effort at a larger pace to keep the impact of climate change minimum. Recently, as you can see in this slide also, in January 2020, the doomsday clock created by the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists in 1947 as a metaphor to indicate how near we are to the end of humanity or catastrophe set the clock closest to the midnight that than at any other time in its 75-year lifetime. According to the scientists, in setting the clock to 100 second to midnight, the risk that involves are worsening nuclear threats, a lack of climate actions, and cyber-enabled disinformation campaign that undermines society's ability to act. Joint actions are required to carry out measures to tackle the problem of climate change. And towards end, one should remember what David Attenborough said in respect of climate change, that surely we all have responsibility to care for our blue planet. The future of humanity and indeed all life on Earth now depends on us. And also depends on what we are going to do with climate change in coming 10 years. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Shukla, for talking about climate change in terms of non-traditional security. Also, because we are living in a time where you would also have a lot of organizations trying to influence policy processes who are living in denial. So what your presentation is successful in doing is not only telling what does it mean when we talk about climate change, but also what are the lived realities of people who are living in the spaces where it is happening, with specific reference to Arctic, but also how greater impact it is having in contemporary time as we are speaking today. So thank you so much for flagging these issues. Now, let me invite the next speaker, Dr. Shabana Fayyaz, who has joined us here from Pakistan. She is an assistant professor and head of the department at Quaid-i-Azam University at Islamabad. Today, she is going to speak on challenges of youth de-radicalization, Pakistan's case. Over to you, Dr. Fayyaz. You've got 8 minutes. Is Dr. Fayyaz still there? Dr. Fayyaz, can you hear me?
Is it fine now?
Yes, yes, perfect.
Hello,
all right,
everybody.
Over to you.
It's a wonderful opportunity to be a part of all this all-powered session. and specifically with all the diverse aspects stretching from the Bangladesh, from EU perspective on CT and other perspectives. So, today's my presentation brings in another flavor to the today's discussion, and I hope you will be interested in it since it's a topic that not only or a challenge that is faced by Pakistan only, it is something that we as a region face a issue of youth radicalization, and it is not only specific to South Asia, it is also all pervasive around the globe, whether it's a European continent, it is Central Asia, Middle East, and other parts of the world. So this is something when we are dealing with the youth politics, youth issues, youth challenges, and we as the senior people or as the mentors have a responsibility to research on it, to advocate for the DRAD, and also to speak on it. Having said this, as the topic suggests, I'll be looking at the primarily from the issue of youth radicalization and de-radicalization from the counterterrorism perspective. I've heard from our Bangladeshi counterpart very essentially that we need to have a holistic framework of security. Well, over the years of 2 decades of my research and my academic career, I have always been a proponent of a holistic and inclusive security framework. And in fact, my whole PhD thesis is on Pakistan response towards terrorism. It is available in the book form now. And it's a study of Musharraf era. So basically, unless we don't need to reframe our security lenses, we cannot, as a state managers or the part of the academia or the intelligentsia, we cannot and should not expect a decisive result on the issue of youth radicalization. Having said this, the study that I'll be deliberating today with you or sharing my insights today with you is primarily divided into 3 parts. The part 1 is about the genesis of youth radicalization. What is it? What it means? And what is its nature and face in case of Pakistan? This is what you can have the lessons drawn for your own countries, and we can deliberate on it in our question and answer session. The second part of the study focuses what the state has been and how the state has been framing this issue and responding to this very critical issue of youth radicalization, and thereafter the youth DRAD program, that is the de-radicalization program. And the final part is primarily a submissions from based on the insights gathered from the 2 earlier parts, that is that how to move forward on the front of youth DRAD in specifically in case of Pakistan. And this is a very generalized topic, I must say, because it is not something, as I've said, only for Pakistan specific. You can draw your relevances to the respective case studies. I'm not saying it is all pervasive and true to all the countries, it is not, but there are certain common elements one can trace in our own societies. Coming to the genesis of youth radicalization in Pakistan. To begin with, when we are looking into the case of Pakistan, it is not a 1-year job. It is not something, one should be very clear. You cannot blame one government, one political party, one ethnic group, one sectarian element, one of your neighbors for germinating the youth radicalization in the country. It is a whole mix. It has a history to it, where you have the misdoings coming from the state in form of its policies. You have the responses from the communities that were ignored largely, and then you have the policies and the misdoings from the implementers of security policies in the state. So it is a mixed bag. In case of Pakistan, the youth is a mixed bag of everything. It has anti-India connotations, it has anti-Christian connotations, it has anti-Jew connotations, it has anti-West connotations, it is sectarian in outlook, it is ethnic in outlook, it is provincial in outlook, and it is anti-democratic in outlook, and above all, it is anti-nation state in outlook. So you can say that Pakistan's youth radicalization process is a very complex situation. It is not 1-year job, it has a history to it. And in making of the youth radicalization, our geography, our hostility with our neighbors and external actors' influences within the country, our unresolved issues and our lack of economic development, lack of focus on education, all that has combined, social development has combined to create this mixed bag of everything. So this is what in a nutshell is the youth radicalization is. Then there is also a debate that youth radicalization started during the General Zia era, when Pakistan became a part of Afghan Jihad and started producing or sending the youth in the Afghan Mujahideen's campaign in the name of jihad versus the infidels, Russia. Yes, it is true, but is it all truth? This is what is very important. And if it was so, then why it was not checked? This is another element that needs introspection. The question is that when the US left in a haste, so the Pakistan government, also being a weak and a developing state or a quasi-democracy, also looked the other way without looking into the long-term cost of its investment in the name of jihad in Afghanistan. And this continued for years and years. And few governments came, whether it was a democracy government, Benazir government, or the Nawaz Sharif government and other governments. All sides were so grappled and their hands were full with other issues of economic development, debt rescheduling, defense issues, and so on and so forth. They always ignored the issue of germination of youth radicalization. This was something that was seen to be pushed under the carpet. Now then came the 9/11, and you had to launch the army operations with the Sawat uprising there, and also violence trends within Pakistan coming up and up. You raised the operation, then the suicide attacks started happening. What was observed by the analyst was, and also the security people, was that those who were carrying out the suicide attacks, they were male youth, and they were young youth. So that was very alarming. That's where a point where, the army, the security people, the civilian people, and the political people started thinking that what is wrong with our youth? Why they are following and they are sacrificing for something that is supposed to be an anti-Pakistan, anti-state activities? Why they are getting into this? So there came a realization that we have to put our house in order. Have we put our house in order? This is a big question mark. I will leave it open to the audience. Moving forward quickly, you see another phases. We faced another sort of a horrendous violent attack on our young children on 2014 December, when it was a Peshawar massacre in the school and again the originators were traced from Afghanistan, ending with Afghan refugees here, and also some youth elements involved in that attacks. So there the government became very vocal. The ground was swelled for all the national narrative on counterterrorism. They realized that what is wrong with our youth? We need to invest in youth. National youth policy came forward, and then the curriculum revision that was started under the Musharraf regime, it gained momentum. What was the idea behind all this? I'm moving you to the second part of the study. The idea was to if we reframe the education, we will reframe the mindset. I agree with that. But the question is, you have to move beyond the education framework as well. You have to see where the youth is coming from. What is the environment of their household? What is their home bringing? Upbringing is like. What is the societal makeup? What is their neighborhood? What they are saying about the issues? So this is something we need to realize. So there the government, the army in 2012 and later on earliest from 90, they started the de-radicalization of the juveniles who were caught in their army operations, and also fixed it with the families where they were coming from, and also the villages where they were bringing a lot of people. So this was one way of thinking. But the important point to register is that it was more of it remains a state-centric approach to the youth de-radicalization efforts. there has been an effort of working together, cooperation between the civilians and the defense organizations to work together in this field. But a lot needs to be done here. So there is a lot of blanks available in this arena. Another response of the governments has been...
Dr. Fayyaz, I'll request you to sort of wind up your presentation.
I'm just moving
Sure.
to the final.
Thank you.
Another important point is you need to have a state and societal partnership. This is one of the major takeaways of WASU study, that you need to rewrite this contract, the state and people and state contract, when we are looking into the society, where the state is the savior, the people are the facilitators of the security. So unless that is reframed, you cannot look into the DRAD program. And the DRAD program of the youth has to be inclusive in nature, and it has to be a generational task. It cannot be a regime-specific approach. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Fayyaz, for talking about one very specific idea of which is related to youth. This is also sort of a very dominant understanding when one looks at the work that has been done on youth. So there is a binary within which the youth is looked at, and you looked at a very specific aspect of policy, and then you had touched upon two different policies. One is DRAD policy, and the other is the linking to national youth policy and the challenges that are associated with it, and the possibility of working instead of looking at center top to down, but the possibility of looking at cooperation between state and society working towards youth. So it's very interesting. There can be a lot of questions that can come into mind, but let's hope that there are questions. Let me also ask the audience the question. You can keep posting as the presentations are going and getting over. You can keep posting, typing the questions in the chat box. Thank you, Dr. Fayyaz. We'll come back to you in the question and answer session. Let me move on to the next speaker. The next speaker is Ms. Sampriti Biswas. She is a doctoral candidate at Jawaharlal Nehru University, and she would be presenting today on contextualizing the migration policy of Russia. Over to you, Ms. Biswas. You've got 8 minutes.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for the introduction. Am I audible?
Yes, we can hear you.
So in 2012, the Russian president approved of a new concept of state migration policy, which was one of a kind state initiative pertaining to migration. Now, this concept was approved in 2012, but signed in 2018, and subsequently, in a phased manner, this concept has been implemented. Now, the concept through 3 successive stages aims at it aims at attracting migrants to Russia. Now, Russia has been facing a severe demographic deficit in the recent past. So the president, Vladimir Putin, wants to attract at least 10 million migrants into the Russian territory. Secondly, the concept also wishes to not only attract migrants to Russia, but relocate them to areas that have a lot of economic potential, but are underdeveloped and do not have there's very low population in these areas, like the Far East and the Siberian region. And thirdly, this concept wishes to mitigate the challenge of illegal migration. Before this concept, Russia did not have a well-formulated migration policy at place. Right after the disintegration of the Soviet Union, 15 new countries emerged, out of which the Russian Federation was the largest. And the problem of migration was compounded because what was in the Soviet era, internal borders, all of a sudden overnight became international borders. So the emphasis was always on the CIS countries. Now, CIS stands for the Commonwealth of Independent States. It is an association of all those states that were a part of the erstwhile Soviet Union. So the emphasis has always been on the CIS countries. Now, Russia gave a kind of preferential treatment to the of these countries, they could travel to Russia without a visa and they could stay there for 90 days. Now, this created huge problems of illegal migration. For example, out of the 12 million migrants who came to Russia, according to the United Nations International Migration Reports of 2019, 85% were from these CIS countries, with the maximum of 26% belonging from Ukraine, followed by 20% from Kazakhstan and 10% from Uzbekistan. Now, these migrants who come from the CIS countries, they often take up jobs that are not generally taken up by ethnic Russians. These jobs are in the shadow economy sector. They are often in the private organized sector. So these migrants who come and take up these jobs, their educational qualifications is also very low compared to an average ethnic Russian. But then they get these jobs because the average ethnic Russians do not want to take up these jobs. And these migrants are made to overwork. They are paid a really low amount and in pathetic conditions, they are made to work. So as a result of which, xenophobic tendencies have also emerged in the Russian society against these migrants. Now, the Wilson Center had published a report in which it stated that around 50% of the ethnic Russians harbor some sort of prejudice against these migrants. Thirdly, this illegal migration problem was since it's a result of the preferential treatment to the CIS nationals. Due to this illegal migration, a number of migrants come to Russia and they do not want to leave after the free 90-day period that is given to them. So they take up jobs in these organized private sectors, and but they are not registered with the employment accounting systems, nor do they have any kind of formal contract with their employers. Now, this entire illegal migration problem has been an issue in the context of migration in Russia. For example, at the end of 2019, the secretary of the Russian Security Council had stated that at the end of 2019, there were around 29,000 cases of illegal activities, criminal activities that were associated with illegal migration. And also in the same year, in the first 8 months of 2019, 5 terrorist activities were prevented in the Central Federal District of Russia. So this new concept that has been put in place has been approved in 2012 and signed in 2019. This concept tries to eliminate the challenges of the previous migration regime. It has now made work patents compulsory for the migrants, whoever, even the CIS nationals, when they come to Russia, it is compulsory for them to have work patents from the government so that a proper record is maintained, illegal migration is curbed. Added to that, the government has also taken up the help of information technology and has attempted to digitalize the migration governance system. Added to this, there is also one aspect that that the concept of the state migration policy highlights. That is Russia's attempt. Russia has been, the concept has been very clear in its approach towards kind of forming a homogeneous political, social, and economic space. Because it states that any migrant who wishes to come and work in Russia, they have to pass compulsory examinations of the Russian language and Russian history. So this again this plays into Russia's greater objective of forming a homogeneous space in its near abroad, that is the CIS countries. So Russia has been this concept is, if I contextualize this concept as my topic suggests, Russia is attracting migrants to kind of offset its demographic deficit. It wants skilled migrants in its Far East, in its northern regions. But at the same time, it has taken up the issue of illegal migration that was very much prevalent in Russia due to the previous migration regime. And though this migration concept is a one-of-a-kind state initiative, which was for a very long time absent in Russia, there was no well-formulated policy of migration policy. Though this is a kind of a one-of-a-kind initiative, Yet there are certain challenges that is present in the concept. For example, the concept talks of a number of category of migrants, but it's willing to give citizenship, as I said, because of the demographic deficit in Russia. Russia is willing to attract as many migrants as possible. But at the same time, the concept does not take into account the category of migrants who wishes to travel to Russia, work there for a considerable period of time, and then return to their home countries. This concept does not talk about them. Secondly, the concept is extremely centralized. It has been approved by the President of Russia. And since it is centralized, it does not give any role to the regional and local leaders to have any kind, it doesn't give any scope to these local leaders to engage with issues of migration, therefore making the process of this entire process of integration at the societal level difficult. And thirdly, Russia is kind of using this concept has been appealing to the compatriots of Russia. Russia has been harping on attracting compatriots and Russian speaking migrants into the Russian territory. This entire appeal to the compatriots is basically playing out in Russia's greater objective of kind of propagating a Russian cultural world, which is bigger than the territorial entity of Russia. So all in all, these are the limitations because this policy can be used by Russia to have a leverage in its political relations with the weaker neighbors that is CIS countries. So with that, I would like to end my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Biswas. You have touched upon very important issues regarding non-traditional security. You have looked at several layers of analysis on Russia's migration policy, not only about attracting migrants, but also the issue about relocating, the labor rights that are associated with it, the problem of xenophobia, which is on the rise, due to the dynamics that are changing due to migration policy. And also something that we had missed out earlier is an aspect of non-traditional security which is very crucial, which is that of cyberspace. And I hope that in further discussion, this also we get the chance to unpack this idea as well. So thank you so much for flagging these issues. We would come back to you during the discussion. Let me move to the next speaker for today's event. Our next speaker is Mr. Kaiful Bari. He's a student in Jamia Millia Islamia, New Delhi, and will be presenting on Eastern Mediterranean from gas exploration to changing geopolitics. Over to you, Mr. Bari.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you all the members, and thank you, NIICE, for giving this opportunity. It all started in February 2018, when there's an Italian company that had explored 3.5 cubic trillion of gas in Levant region, and after that, everything in the Eastern Mediterranean is like shuffling and is meta state. Meanwhile, we have been seeing the news that tussle between Cyprus, Greece, and Turkey have been rising, and in this paper, I want to map out 5 points, like starting from how regionalism getting shape in Eastern Mediterranean, and gas exploration is affecting that that whole geopolitical figure, and the dispute between Turkey and Cyprus. So Eastern Mediterranean has always been important to Europe, and in today's world, natural gas is the remedy to the Paris Agreement, and it has been estimated that Eastern Mediterranean potential is so much that it can fulfill the need of Europe and Eastern Mediterranean for almost 50 years. But the Turkey and Cyprus are engaging in the conflict since the northern part of the Cyprus is of a Turkish population. It is held by Turkey. So there is a conflict in the understanding of the area to explore. Like Turkey hasn't signed UN Convention of Law of Sea, so it believes in the continental shift theory. Like if till the continental shift, the state has right to explore the gas and all. But the Cyprus, which is immediate neighbor of Turkey, is trying to solve its economic, energy, and further many more crises through this exploration. And the East Med Forum, which has been created in the last 5 years, it includes Israel, Greece, Cyprus, Egypt, but it has very distinctively excluded Turkey. And for Turkey, it's like it was its natural right to be in the forum. And at the same time, Turkey has this issue that it has all the facilities to export gas to Europe, but why to create a new one which passes by Cyprus, Greece, and then exporting its gas to Europe? But the situation in the region is like Libya. Libya is the largest country in the Mediterranean. So now Turkey is trying to be in agreement with Libya so that it can counter the opposite force, that is East Med Forum. And the whole this changing geopolitical scenario is like putting the whole region on a time bomb. Like in any instance, there could be an uncontrollable escalation. uh, the situation in the past few months, in which Turkey exploration ships have uh, uh, col- get engaged with the Greece maritime. So all these things, which makes us ponder back upon the how regionalism works. For any region to be successful, there must be there must be 3 to 4 points which need to follow. Like there should be equal benefit to the all states. Second, there must be a focal point. Like for example, in European Union, there is a focal point like Germany that drives the whole union, and there must be some external force that can guide these members and this region to prosperity. But in this case, Turkey being the largest coast in the Mediterranean, it has been excluded. And opposite to that, Israel, Greece, and Cyprus are trying to export those gases to Europe and bypassing Turkey. So all these things have aided Turkey, and at the same time we have been witnessing the rise of populist government throughout the world, and the same goes for the president of Turkey. And it is he is trying to garner the whole nationalist wave of the country, and try to assert himself as a modern Ataturk. So for this and we need to also focus on the why gas is so important for the Eastern Mediterranean. So since a century ago, the whole gas and oil went to Saudi Arabia, UAE, Kuwait, and basically OPEC forum. And the last 10 years has showed them potential that can not only produce, consume, but also they can export the gas to the different parts of Europe. And at the same time, Europe is purchasing gas from Russia, and the relation between the NATO and Russia is hampering that deal. And we need to focus on why it is so important for Turkey and Cyprus, this whole East Med forum. Because for Turkey, 98% of gas it imports mainly from Iran and Russia, and which is going to expire in a couple of years. And for Cyprus has a population of 12 lakhs, and their annual consumption is around 3,500 kilowatt hour for each population. That means that they can not only produce but also consume, that is 10% of the total production, and then 90% they can export to the Europe. So this is a big deal for Cyprus. And even after the inauguration of the East Med Forum, there was a kind of celebration, and they're celebrating with crackers and sweets and all. That can transform Cyprus to about $2 billion economy. And at the same time, Turkey is facing crisis because the relation with Iran and Russia is not good, and they import 98% gas from them. But at the same time, we need to focus on the external elements as well. Why France is France is getting involved in this conflict is because of its ENI. There's it is an oil company of France that first discovered the gas, and then France had a big stake in it. And France, most of the Europe mainly import their gas from Russia. And the recent, we have seen the poisoning of the opposition leader of Russia, and all these things is aggravating the situation. So they are, and the pipeline between the Europe and the Russia is Nord Stream 2, and Nord Stream 2 is, and at the same time Trump is playing it. Trump has been openly declared that the Nord Stream should be abandoned and the focus should be on East Med Forum. But now, is it possible that it's they can export gas from East Mediterranean to Europe? Many scholars believe that this is just symbolic. This whole forum is a symbolic to deter Turkey and Russia. So overall, all these debates and conflicts is getting from bad to worse in especially in last 1 year. So and we have seen the failure of any region without a proper guidance and without the involvement of all the stakeholders. And in this case, Turkey has been excluded, and it's all these things are aching Turkey to go to any extent to preserve its sovereignty. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bari, for presenting several aspects of some limitations of regionalism in the Mediterranean, the issue of energy security and related dynamics. Thanks for the presentation. And let me now move on to Dr. Apsana Gautam, who is from Southwestern University, Philippines, and she'll be presenting on COVID-19. It's ophthalmic manifestations and eye protection. Over to you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much for this opportunity. So my today's topic is ophthalmic manifestation, eye protection in COVID-19. I'd like to start by sharing my screen. Okay. So ophthalmic manifestation can be defined as the eye symptom of an illness, and today I'll be talking about how it is correlated with COVID-19. The ongoing pandemic has been linked to ophthalmology since its beginning. It started in December 30, 2019, when a Chinese ophthalmologist, Dr. Deepen Liang, warned his colleagues about outbreak similar to severe acute respiratory syndrome, which happened in Wuhan, China. By 30 Jan 2020, the outbreak became a public health emergency. As of September 2020, 25.4 million cases have been registered worldwide. One of the most uncommon COVID-19 symptom is ophthalmological, and ocular manifestation is not a widely covered topic. So today I'm going to be discussing about this manifestation. Okay. As per the study published in the British Journal of Ophthalmology, this ophthalmic manifestation can be linked with the pink eye, and it generally occurs in the middle stages of infection. The data is very scarce and conflicting to support this claim, and only 3 studies in the Chinese media have described this topic. So today, by understanding ocular manifestation of patients with COVID-19, both ophthalmologists and others may facilitate the transmission and the prevention of transmission of this disease. So one of the first cases series reported by in a hospital center in Hubei province, China, where out of 28 hospitalized patients, 12 patients with COVID-19 reported such ocular symptoms. And this ocular symptoms is only presented in very severe cases of COVID-19. Here I'll be talking about a more common symptom called pink eye, which is also commonly called as conjunctivitis. This symptom may not be as common as other symptoms like fever, dry cough, and fatigue. Research has also found it seems to be a more common symptom in people with very severe cases of COVID-19. Sorry for that. Some reports suggest that those healthcare workers who did not wear proper eye protection were tested positive with ocular abnormalities. One of the first cases involved an anesthesiologist who performed an intubation procedure without ocular protection on a COVID-19 patient. She was later diagnosed with COVID-19. Thus, this shred of evidence supports the theory that the virus takes the inner root of an eye as an entrance route. Moving forward, all hospitals and clinics should therefore follow necessary precautions to prevent any kind of transmission of COVID-19. Further, maintaining social distance is very difficult in clinical settings. As a result, ophthalmologists and physicians are at a very high risk. Thus, the proper disinfectant procedure needs to be implemented to avoid any kind of viral transmission of this disease. Next, we'll be talking about the treatment and how we can all monitor our symptoms. So moving forward, all hospitals and clinics should therefore follow necessary precautions to prevent any kind of transmission of COVID-19. Within the inpatient, outpatient, and surgical settings, a professional approach is very necessary to manage patients with and to mitigate the spread of the disease successfully. There should be one of the important factors that I like to note is there should be clear communication between hospital administration, provided teams, and clinic support staff regarding wearing PPE, utilizing tech for consultation proposal. So one of the most commonly there was this article published by American Academy of Ophthalmology, which stated that lens wearers are advised to switch to glasses during this epidemic, as this will prevent or create a physical barrier between respiratory droplets and ocular secretion, and this will be very much limited by wearing glasses instead of lens, and this is very helpful for both the patients and the doctor to monitor and examine the COVID patients too. The suggested precautions also include personal protective equipment, also known as PPE, that is highly effective to prevent frontline workers to control and prevent the viral spread. Patients will be instructed to avoid touching the eye, nose, and mouth. With these ocular measures combined with recommended practices like washing hands, staying few distance away from the sick people. All this can reduce the transmission and stay on top of this COVID-19 pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Gautam. You have talked about something that is not part of the public discourse or the information that is provided by state, which is so the issue of lack of information on ophthalmic health and its related sort of health consequences for in case of COVID. So that's something that we know for sure that it's not part of either general information that is provided to people and also the larger public discussion. You've also touched upon the issue of support for care workers and also self-care when it comes to the protection of eye. So it was very informative, and I hope that you would also sort of like to talk more about how can this information and a discussion about this may be more general so that it's important for prevention. Now, with that, we have come to the conclusion of all the presentations. Uh, I cannot see any questions that are on the chat box as of now, uh, which can be due to two reasons. One is that the presenters did not have much time. So maybe we can, the audience wants to listen more from the presenters, or maybe because, you have sort of touched upon various, a wide range of issues. And that's one of the reasons why you would not have any questions. But let me open the floor now for participants. If they have questions that they would like to ask to each other, you can unmute yourself, introduce, tell us whom you're asking this question to, and then you can ask the question. Do we have any questions from the presenters, for the other presenters? So while the presenters and the audience is framing, let me flag a few issues that have come from the presentations. As I said, the presentations were wide ranging. Several issues have been touched upon, which are very critical to the understanding of non-traditional security issues. And definitely a discussion on this area and further work would be more enriching. We had talked about COVID-19 not only from uh, from the perspective of global governance, but also the overall understanding how that is related to the issue of non-traditional security. We had also discussed the specific aspect within non-traditional security, which is in terrorism in case of the policy that European Union has, and also from South Asia, the idea of de-radicalization, the policy related to it, the policy of migration in Russia, and also the changing dynamics and very crucial issue of climate change. From there to then we jump to Mediterranean, where we talked about gas exploration. It's related to changing geopolitics. And at the end, we were talking about something which we don't see in public discourse, which is the aspect of protection of the eye, the issue related to COVID care workers. We've got one question, and I'm going to read it out to you. No, this is not a question. Yeah. It's 19 years of 9/11. How different is the world in last 2 decades? This is a question that has been asked from Facebook, and I'm not sure if it is specific to any presenter. So let me open it to all the presenters. If any one of you would like to take, you might know that our program is also on Facebook Live, and we have received a question from Facebook. That over the last 2 decades, how different the world is as of now. So any one of the presenters, would you like to respond to this question?
Can I comment on that?
Yes.
Yeah, so since as I had mentioned this in my presentation as well, after 9/11, what happened was, 9/11 was one attack which was completely unprecedented, not just to US, but to countries across the globe. The sheer impact which it had, it did not just hit the infrastructure or the lives of people. I mean, it hit at a very psychological point in people, especially in the US. So what has happened after that is a lot of countries have taken a very hard stance towards terrorism, towards such non-state actors, like I mentioned, with America and in its war on terror, and Europe with its criminal law enforcement approach. Similarly, we see India has a different counterterrorism approach. All countries, they have adopted some sort of, and what I'm trying to say is a new kind of awareness has come about terrorism. So they have probably tried to become more prepared towards countering this threat. But another con, I mean, these are such pros which come with it, but another con which I would like to mention, which has come along with it, has been human rights violations in the concept of counterterrorism. Right. This is actually a research topic which is very much untouched, but human rights are largely being violated in terms of counterterrorism. I mean, we see that in US, Europe, and across the globe, countries across the globe. So I think in last 2 decades, this has also come to the forefront. A lot of awareness should be put into this also. That in terms of countering terrorism, we are also we are doing racial profiling. We are these sleeper cells that we have, and these detention centers that we are creating. This is also creating some sort of discrimination within communities. So that is one thing that I just, on the top of my head, a point which I like to mention. Thanks.
All right, so maybe other presenters can come back to that question. We have got one specific question to Dr. Fayyaz. This is also from Facebook, I guess. What steps has the government of Pakistan taken to control the radicalization of youth in Pakistan? So maybe Dr. Fayyaz can expand on the two policies that she was talking about, the National Youth Policy and DDAD program in Pakistan. Dr. Fayyaz?
Yes, please. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, it's a very relevant question and extremely pertinent as well. The youth radicalization initially was framed as something of a sporadic happening by the security managers in Pakistan. But over the years, I've said specifically after 9/11, there was initially an understanding that there is either a problem with our religious schoolings, that is the madrasas, but soon that was also realized that this is the suicide attacks on the other planning or the handlers were also found in the prestigious private academic institution. So it was realized that it is working on all ends. So the threat is all pervasive. So then initially or still it continues, the madrasa reform education was given a priority, and a number of initiatives were taken in that regard. I have been part of the dialogues between madrasa clerics and also the government officials in between. That what I realized it that initially after 9/11 and the years 5-6 years or 10 years after falling that, there exists a lot of gap and the distrust between the both sides, and specifically the clergies. They think that it is the curriculum revision is a Western sponsored agenda, and it will really disarm or it will deform the Quranic education, so as we have been practicing over the 70 or hundreds of years. So this fear, what I realized, the government through its gradual approach of integrating the madrasa reforms and equating it with the formal education as well, degrees, in a sense of curriculum development, it has bear some fruit. And what has come to realize is that there is no misunderstanding that it is something outside agenda. So what they have done is that there are English tutors are there, Pakistan studies tutors are there, and then the equation of degrees are underway. So this is one aspect. Another is the economic, taken the steps in the economic sectors. Specifically, the present governments have been initiating, the skill development centers and the vocational development centers, not in urban areas only, but in the far-flung areas where you see the poverty and lack of social development is very much there, and even the educational facilities are very minimal. So that is another step. Then there is a prudent use of media. It still has a lot has to be done in that aspect as well. They have started the radio programs, and then radio programs, television dialogues, and trying to involve the people specifically in far-flung areas of Balochistan and the KP and the former FATA areas, where through the sports, the peace messages are being given and involving them sports in a other community-wise. And another important aspect has been the use of what I've said is the skill development, education, political mainstreaming of the youth development. Youth councils, and especially in the case of the COVID happening, the government initiated very skillfully the Tiger Youth Forces, where the youth were given a responsibility to spread the message that you have to take these measures, where the community should be aware and vigilant not to make the spread of, the COVID a big happening, and also involved in the relief sector. So these are short, but having said this, I must say this is not as a complete successful story. We are on the road to derad of the youth, but a lot needs to be done on this front.
Thank you so much, Dr. Fayyaz. We've got more questions for the speakers. There's one question which is from YouTube. COVID-19 is one of the non-traditional security threat, and its impact is not less than a world war. How much importance does non-traditional security threat get in international relations? And how much importance the nation states give to it. Now, I guess that this is something that can be taken up by Dr. Rahman or by Dr. Tripathi, or maybe both of you.
So, okay, thank you very much. So for the questions, I think that in the international relations, as because of the lack of time, I didn't explain that. There is a very dominant theory like liberalism. So over there, liberal or new liberal, they are trying to focus on traditional, more than non-traditional security in their own agenda, like Robert Kuhn and many more. Okay, Giuseppe and many more liberal theories. They're focusing on the idea of non-traditional security in the agenda through the liberalism. So I think this is ongoing, and this is the discussions in the international relations. If you say the result, then I already shown you that the result is we have World Health Organizations. They're also working. They're also predicting the upcoming pandemics and other stuffs. But the problem is with the behavior of the state. They are more on the realist approach of national security, like in the pandemic, there is a clashes between India and China. There is an existing knowledge. We need to use that sort of knowledge that we are using in terms of the European Union use that sort of knowledge, and also Southeast Asian also use that knowledge. I think that we can utilize that sort of issues, as this is you already compared these things within a world war or war. So I think that this is the time I tend to think about all those things. Okay, I hope you understood. Thank you so much again.
Thank you. Thank you for your response. Now let me move to the next question that has come to us through Facebook. Can any of the speakers throw light on the radicalization of youth in other South Asian countries, especially India and Bangladesh? So this is open to everybody. I'm going to read the next question as well, which is directed to Dr. Apsana Gautam. And the question is, you talked about impact of COVID-19 on eyes. Does eye have any impact on psychology of the person? What our health impact will COVID-19 have on human beings in days to come? So this is a much more broader question. So before Ms. Gautam takes it up, let me ask if any of the speakers here, any of the presenters would like to respond to the question on radicalization in other South Asian countries, in India or Bangladesh, or would Dr. Fayyaz like to talk about her work, which also looks at other South Asian countries?
Yes, thank you again, Dr. Ojha. Radicalization, I've said earlier, is not something only focuses on one country. This is a very complex phenomena, and youth radicalization is there. It is primarily tied to the perception of youth about its understanding, and also the frustration of youth about its environment. So whether it is within the country, it is within a community, or it is outside the country, and at the global level. So if you look into the South Asian youth radicalization, it is again a pack of complex identities. You have the multiple identities within the South Asian countries. First, it starts from their own ethnic, sectarian, and religious identity. It then goes to their communal identity. It moves to their obviously religious identity, economic and social understandings, and also to the national identity and their identity versus the other nations living in this part of the world. So it is very, very complex. Now, what important point is that the youth in South Asia is sitting on a slippery slope. They are vulnerable, and these youth are exploited by the highly vocal and intelligent minorities, whether they are, or the majorities, whether they are political, religious, economic, or whatever, and they are using these people for their benefit. This is one approach. Sometimes these youth become so motivated, then we see an issue of lone actor, undertaking. So they themselves become motivators of change and use the violence as that. I recently concluded a study on the religious narratives of COVID in South Asia. Here I have looked at the India and Bangladesh as well. So this is basically the religious. Now, in the case of India and Bangladesh, the both religions, in case of Bangladesh, you have a different undertones of radicalization forward. And in case of
affect our psychology. So we have no.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much. So now let me move to Ms. Gautam. The question is more on more about, you've talked about the impact of COVID-19 on the eyes. The person who's asking question would like to also talk about the psychological aspect, and also like in post-COVID situation overall, what are our health impact that COVID-19 will have on human beings in coming days? So it's a very broad question. Would you like to engage with it, Ms. Gautam?
I'll just give a short description about that. I'll just like to share my viewpoint. So talking about the psychology of a person, it really depends on each individual. So it's not really known, because the visual brain has its own logic and preferences, which are not yet understood by us cortically. Some objects may look beautiful and trigger the same psychological aspects in our brain. So knowledge of non-visual characteristics affects how objects are seen. So it really depends. And it's a case-by-case basis. And the other question, so I am not really sure how to broaden the topic and answer that, but I do believe that it affects psychology of the person if there is any visual impairment, because we believe that eyes are one of the most vital part of the body. So but if there is a close cooperation between ophthalmologist and mental health professional, it is a very key way to help the patient with vision eye impairment. What other health impact will COVID-19 have on human? The virus keeps on changing its strain, so it's very hard to know what else it can do to humans. Though a lot of scientists are researching about that, even it is very hard to come up with a proper injection or proper virus injection. So I like to conclude by saying that it's at least 5 to 10 years. So we are still unaware about lots of possibilities that COVID-19 might have on humans. So as time will come, inspect on the subjects more broaden health impacts or negative aspects will come into highlight. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We don't have any questions in the chat box as of now. Do the presenters have questions that they would like to ask to the fellow presenters?
Can I ask a question?
Yes. You also have to tell us with you asking the question to which presenter.
So I have yes, I'm asking. We know that every state of former Soviet Union are Russian speaking. So I think that according to my assumption, they're not facing the problem in Russia right now as a migrant. So what about the other people who are living in Russia as a migrant? They're not from CIS state. I mean, former, Soviet. Soviet. Who are the part of the Soviet Union? Okay. What about? Okay. There's the questions to that particular speakers. So another question is to the Ms. Sinha is, do you think that Brexit will impact on the ongoing combat, strategy of European Union to combat the terrorism that you told you in your presentations? So that's it all. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. The questions then is to Ms. Sampriti Biswas and then to Ms. Shreya Sinha. So Sampriti, if you want to go ahead first, and then Ms. Sinha can take up the question.
Okay, I think the question was, what are the problems that the non-CIS nationals are facing, right? Was that the question?
Yes, right.
Right? See, one point that I wanted to highlight, I don't know how far it has come across in my presentation, but right from the beginning, Russia has taken up a very preferential treatment towards the CIS nationals, and rightfully so, because these are the member states which were previously previously the vassals of the Soviet Union. And this discrepancy, the CIS nationals can easily enter Russia without a visa, they can stay there for 90 days, while other foreigners, like other non-CIS nationals, they have a lot of administrative procedures to follow. This is one major problem that these foreigners have to face. Coming outside the CIS, nationals who come from outside the CIS region, they have to undergo various administrative and bureaucratic procedures to get a work patent, to get other permits, residence permits, and it's very easy for the CIS nationals to get it. So this is one problem. Secondly, even when work patents are given out, the kind of preferential treatment that is meted out to the CIS nationals, Russia does not have the same kind of treatment to other foreigners. And CIS nationals are actually willing, and if you compare Russia to the CIS countries, Russia is pretty developed compared to these countries. So the nationals of these countries are willing to come and settle in Russia and work. While for other foreigners, they basically treat Russia as a transit country to enter Europe. Most of them, they do not want to stay in Russia and work. Most of them prefer Russia as a transit country. They want to just pass through Russia and have access to the other European countries. So these are the two major problems that in my work, I don't know how much I've highlighted, but these are the problems that firstly, the bureaucratic and administrative procedures, even employers who wish to kind of sign contracts with foreigners, they have to enlist why do they need foreigners, and how many of them do they need in their how many of them do they need to kind of employ in the work. All these needs to be presented to the government for authorization. So there are these administrative and bureaucratic procedures. And secondly, as I said, the CIS nationals, they kind of prefer coming and settling and working in Russia, while the others, they mainly they kind of see Russia as a transit to enter the European countries. Thank you. I think have I answered your question?
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Now, may I invite Ms. Sinha to answer the question that was addressed towards her?
Yeah. So the question I understand is, what impact will Brexit have on the counter-terrorism policies of the European Union, right? Yeah. So as I mentioned in my presentation also, I would like to draw one point from there, that a major drawback in EU's counterterrorism has always been the lack of political will between member states. Because EU is a supranational structure and member states are more likely to keep their national interests at hand. So with UK going away, it is going to have a negative impact for sure, because information sharing between UK and the Union is going to reduce further. And the extradition treaties or the warrants which are there between the treaties which are there between UK and the Union are going to be in a questionable situation, because we don't know what is the real deal going to be out of Brexit. I mean, these are all uncertain things. We will know only in a few years how it has really impacted. But since counterterrorism is one mechanism which depends largely on information sharing, and because of the transnational nature of the threat, I believe it is going to have a somewhat negative impact. Also, another point I would like to make is that UK and France have actually, and Germany, these three have actually been the largest resource providing member states to the Union for countering terrorism. So with UK leaving, with Brexit, UK leaving Union, I think that is also going to be a major. So yeah, the rest we will have to see. But I believe these are 2 points which are going to have an impact.
Thank you to all the presenters. We had very rich discussion. We had a wide range of issues that were covered during the presentations by all the presenters. I would say that I'm very thankful that also the fact that all of you kept the presentations in due time. So let me begin by thanking all the presenters for your presentations. There are a few things that I have in my mind, but these are just comments for you to think about in your further work. And I hope you will be converting your presentations into papers that will come in black and white. So my comment is more on how you can respond to these when you're writing your article. The first is what comes out in the discussion is also unpacking the idea of non-traditional security. So non-traditional security, not only specific to who are the actors in non-traditional security, but also what impacts it takes place on people. And when you have countermeasures that are taken, be it in a case of terrorism where there are problems of terrorist methods, or when we are talking about a global pandemic. So the issue of how the focus is much more on what to do after we have a situation, instead of having that on prevention. But when we look at these issues, one also thinks about there are problems that all the presenters have pointed towards the aspect of global governance. What is the alternative that we have in our minds when we are talking about non-traditional security threats and the aspect of governance? We have talked about coordination. We have talked about the issues of region. We have talked about the global issues. Several presenters has also touched WHO and other related actors. What is the alternative that we are looking at? How better can these systems work, but also at the level of people to state? What are the measures that can be taken so that in case of non-traditional security, there can be a better enriched understanding, which also informs the policy, which trickles down to the people and also to state, strengthens the policy responses that we see in case of non-traditional security concerns. So that's one. The other is many a times we have seen in a non-traditional security, the framing of the problem more or less becomes more in the framework of developmentalism. And there is only so far that we can go when we are talking about talking with the framework of developmentalism. So many a times you would have very clear political problems, which cannot be solved only by looking at the aspect of governance. So if you would have, say, for example, in case of youth, where there is a problematic construction of youth, or maybe in case of terrorism, where the construction is problematic, until unless we would have a political solution, it would not be deep, it would not be wide, and it will not be reaching to the people that it is supposed to reach. In case of when we are talking about issues of migration or economic possibilities, what we really miss out is how these problems are sort of address different people differently. Say, for instance, when we're talking about issue of migration and the policy, say, for instance, what Russia has taken up, there is also an aspect of how gendered that policy is. And the changes that the state is talking about, there is a very important aspect, possibility of looking at it through gendered lenses. And also, who would be the stakeholders that one can engage with, that one can invite, to make sure that when we are having a conversation, when we are having a dialogue on non-traditional security, it does not limit itself to talking about centering all the ideas only at the state or at the international organization, so such that it is a more meaningful conversation. But these are sort of broader ideas that I wanted to flag so that it can be taken up. Maybe you can respond to them when you're writing your paper. Let me thank all the presenters. You have been very nice to me. Not only because you made the presentations in time, but also together this panel has been able to look at various wide range of issues, touch upon all of them, and maybe with further research we can go to the depth of each one of these issues. So thank you, the presenters, for the fabulous presentations, and I'm also thankful to all the people who have posted their questions in YouTube, through Facebook, and also through the chat box here. And I'm also thankful to the organizers. NIICE, it's a Leviathan task that you have at your hand. It's just the first day of a brilliant conference. All the best for the conference. Thank you so much.
With this, distinguished speakers, chair, ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of the 8th session. It is my honor to propose a vote of thanks on behalf of NIICE to all those who have graced us with their presence and contributed their parts to make this event a resounding success. First of all, we would like to express our gratitude and sincere thanks to Dr. Abhiruchi Ojha for agreeing to the session today. Our sincere thanks also go to all the speakers for being part of the event and delivering such a comprehensive and convincing presentation. We are really honored to have all the speakers with us here today. We would like to acknowledge our gratitude to our friends from the diplomatic community, experts, academia, and media, and different organizations. Finally, I must mention our deep sense of appreciation for our audience who participated in the webinar and those who are watching us live on a YouTube.